Good evening. My name is Hinek Firovatka, and I will guide you through today's webinar. The title of the webinar is IQRF for Integrators. We will mainly focus today on IQRF Repository, which is a new member of the IQRF ecosystem. And I will first start with a very short presentation containing about 5 slides only. The aim of the presentation is to give you the overview of the topic we will discuss today. At the end, we will go to the real demo and try the things, so it should be then clear to you what's the benefit of the repository and other new things I will present today. So let me go to the presentation at the beginning. I will start with the picture showing the current and the new part of the IQRF ecosystem. As you all know, there are certain products based on IQRF transceivers. So these products, they could be sensors, they could be switches, lights, whatever it is. Inside of them, there is an IQRF transceiver, and we usually call them nodes, as you know. Typically, there is also a coordinator, not typically, but always there is a coordinator that controls the IQRF network. The coordinator resides in the gateway, and today, as a standard, we use a DPA interface to talk between not only the coordinators and the nodes, but also from the outside to the coordinator. The product, the node, typically uses peripherals to be, controlled or giving the status. If you use a DPA, as you know, by definition, there are many embedded peripherals. Yeah? The very well-known LEDs, RAM, EEPROM, UART, and other peripherals. If you use so-called DPA handler, you can implement other peripherals. Your own, we call them custom peripherals, to control your proprietary hardware, for instance, and this is the topic for today, standard peripherals. Standard peripherals means the peripherals that the IQRF Alliance standardized. Today we have 3 peripherals. We have standard sensors, we have standard binary output, and the standard light. Typically, the network is not isolated from the outside world. So it's connected using the internet to the cloud application or any other server application. That application uses, of course, the storage to store the data, has some logic, visualization, or analysis of the data. And today, when there is as a gateway use IQRF Gateway Daemon, the MQTT protocol is used as a standard one to talk between the cloud and the gateway, meaning MQTT broker. So what is standard today? Standard IQRF Alliance peripherals using a DPA protocol, plus standardized MQTT and JSON formats to talk to the daemon. As you know, every product has a unique hardware profile ID. So this number could be used to uniquely identify the product. This is standardized too. So the structure of the hardware profile ID is also described, and the structure is known. Now comes the new member of the ecosystem. It's called IQRF Repository. I will talk more about the details in next slides. Now let me just stay with this block picture only. So the repository is a server. It's an internet service, actually, having the database, having some drivers and other things I will discuss in detail in a few minutes. The central point of the database objects is, again, the product. So one of the basic services you can use a repository for is to get to know what your product is based on hardware profile ID. And what is the interface? The interface to talk to the repository is the today used at many other services, the REST API, and the data are coded using the JSON format. So let's talk a little bit more about the IQRF repository. You can find it at this URL. So it's a hosted HTTPS REST API server. We will go into the details of the API in a few minutes, so there is no need you should browse it now. We will do it together. As I said, it uses a REST API with the JSON data format. And the whole API is well documented, is documented using the Swagger service. You might know Swagger. The Swagger service is used to describe many services, starting from Twitter, ending with Instagram and any other services. So the API of the repository IQRF is also described using the Swagger. We will click it and use it in a few minutes. So the repository gives you the information about and the relations between many IQRF ecosystem objects. When I talk about the objects, I mean companies, manufacturers that manufacture the products based on IQRF for the communication. I mean the DPA handlers, you know. I mean the standards. I mean IQRF overseas versions and DPAs. So those are the objects, and all of them are the information about is stored in the repository, and also including the relations between. This is just the picture showing many tables inside the repository, but these tables, including the relations, is not visible to the user. Only the API that makes it much easier to use it. There is a very new item we talked first on in June last year at the IQRF Summit, and that time it was only the idea. Today it's a reality. It's called the drivers. I will spend some time talking about the drivers, what it is. Those of you who are using IQRF and the DPA, you know that if you want to do something with some peripheral, you have to construct a DPA request based on the format of the message. Okay, so you have to know the format, the protocol. You have to study the documentation, how to pulse LED, how to write to RAM, how to switch on your relay, and so on. And this is sometimes very easy, sometimes more complicated. And our aim is to make it simple for you, for integrators, for anybody who is using IQRF DPA network, to not even know the format of the messages. So the idea of the driver or drivers is to provide you with already prepared routines in code to prepare for you these DPA requests without knowing the format of them. So next time, if you want to just to switch on the LED, you don't have to construct the peripheral number, command, hardware profile ID, and so on and so on and so into the stream of bytes. All what you do is you just download the driver, you just simply execute a routine, prepared routine to prepare for you a DPA request to switch on, for instance, the LED. You take this request, you pass it to the gateway, actually to the coordinator, and when you receive back the response, all you have to do is to call another routine that will decode a DPA response for you and give you the result. Okay? So that was the simple example of controlling LED. Let's talk a little bit about more complicated example. For instance, you want to read a set of sensors using a standard sensor peripheral. So again, you don't have to study the documentation, how to construct such a DPA request. You simply call a routine, prepared routine, specifying you want to read all the sensors or the first one or the temperature, whatever it is. You just call it, you'll get the DPA request, you pass it somehow to your gateway, could be locally, could be over the internet, just pass it there. You will get back again the response, call another routine that will decode the response for you and give you the values of each sensor you read. Yeah, we will go through the example at the end of the today webinar, so you will see how it works. Who is utilizing the repository? As I said, typically the gateways. So if in your gateway you have your logic, your code, your application logic, you can utilize a repository for knowing the information about the products, about the drivers. You can keep your products up to date by getting the latest DPA handler, and so on and so on and so on. The same you can do at the cloud, and of course the IQRF IDE. And in a few minutes I will show you our internal version of IQRF IDE that is already having benefits from using the IQRF repository. So when we talk about integration of your application or any other application with IQRF repository, we are talking about 3 possible levels of integration. The first, the simplest version of integration is just to know and to recognize the products, the companies. So for instance, you will get the response from a device, from the product, the hardware profile ID. So by executing a query to the repository, you can easily find out which product it is, who is manufacturer, you can get the picture of it, and so on and so on and so on. That's the first very easy integration level, and we already have this in our IQRF ID. I will show you in a few minutes. The second level is more complicated. That level allows you to keep your products up to date. We just want to have it similar like we used to have it with our, for instance, mobile phones. If you have an Android or Apple, whatever it is, the system keeps your applications, keeps your apps always up to date. The same applies also to your operating system. We want to have the same. So the repository is keeping the latest DPA handlers for the products, and using the API of the repository and DPA commands, you can keep your network and your devices always up to date with the latest possible DPA handler. We are at the middle of the way in this level of integration in the IQRF IDE, and again I will show it later on. The third level is using the drivers, meaning that you want to program your logic and you don't want to manually construct DPA requests and parse DPA responses using the bytes, bits, and very complicated structures. So we prepared many dozens of routines for each DPA command available. I'm talking about embedded peripherals, LEDs, RAM, OS, coordinate node, and I'm also talking about the standard peripherals, so light, sensors, binary outputs. So today, what we will cover and what I will do in more details now on is I'll show you the REST API, the API of the repository, how to use it, what are the results. Then I will show you a demo of IQRF IDE, what level of integration we have. That could be an inspiration for you. I'll show you the place where you can find out details about all of other standards. Then I will talk about the drivers and including the examples of using them. So we have today prepared examples in C#, .NET, and HTML page, both of them using gateway and the repository to talk to the network and to get data from it. Last but not least, I will also touch a certification process, how it works today. And this is it. So now give me a small break to switch from presentation from my notebook display to the main display. And just in case, if there are already some questions, you can try it. Maybe I will be able to answer even during switching the presentation screen.
Yeah, maybe I will use this moment to invite all to our IQRF Summit 2018, which will happen at the end of April, 24th and 25th. So I hope to see you all there, because we will have also, let's say, a practical training for focused especially on integrators. So you will be able to test yourself how to put an IQRF system or IQRF IoT system together. Yeah, so this will be actually, let's say, continuation of this first webinar and introduction of the repository.
All right, I think I'm ready. Now you should see the screen, the display with the web browser. Just in case, guys, if you encounter a big delay between what I talk and what I show compared to what you see, just let me know. I will slow down or wait, because it could happen because of internet connection. So this is the page that will your browser show you if you go to the repository API. It's an empty page because it links you directly to the root of the documentation page. So I will start with the repository API. This is the documentation, the full documentation of the repository API. It's written using the Swagger. The Swagger is a well-known service for describing the APIs. As I said, all the major players are using the same service for that. Actually, the full API is described in one JSON file that you can download, and using the Swagger, you can even generate automatically your clients in, let's say, something like 20 different frameworks. But now let's go to the API itself. So as I said, the API can give you the information and durations of many objects, like companies, like manufacturers, products, the packages, standards, all IQRF OS and DPA versions, and some other stuff. So let's start with something simple like companies, for instance. So if you call the API companies, you will get a list of all companies. Let's try it inside the Swagger. Then I will go to the page where we have examples already prepared. So let's try it out and execute. And as you can see, it gives me the list of all the companies we today have registered in the repository. All right. Same with manufacturers, products, packages, standards. Let me go back to the main documentation page and let's try some examples. So let's try all the products, for instance. So this is the list of all the today certified products we have in the repository. All right. For instance, let's start with the first one. Protronics is a well-known sensor measuring carbon dioxide, relative humidity, and temperature. Hardware profile ID is 1. Manufacturer code ID is 1. It's a Protronics. This is the home page of the product, and this is the picture of the product. And then comes the other products. Yeah, like which one we will try. For instance, Netio. Netio is the other one I have today connected, as you can see on the webcam. So this is the Netio plug we have connected today to our demo network, and here is the information about it, yeah? Including the picture, as you can see, and so on and so on and so on. If you want to get the detailed information about certain product, yeah, the API is very simple, just API/products/ the hardware profile ID. So you will get the detailed information about the, specific product. The same, for instance, with companies. So this is the list of all companies. If you want to get the information about certain company, just /ID of the company. Very similar to the manufacturer. The same logic to keep it simple is also when talking about of operating system and DPAs. Yeah, you can get all the possible supported combinations of operating system and the DPA. And very important is the package object. The package object is the object that says that, for instance, for the product of hardware profile ID number 1, we have the package for operating system of that version and this DPA. We have the DPA handler. You can download it, and there's also the hash, the stamp of it, so you can be sure that the handler is not modified. So this is the list of all packages we have today in the repository. You can, of course, filter them. So if you want to know what are the packages for the certain product of the certain version of the certain operating system and the DPA, you simply put the query and you will get it, right? So for instance, if you want to get all the products, all the packages for this operating system, for instance, let's try it, okay? Oh, it's only one. But if you want to go to the very details of the package, you simply put a / and the ID of the package. And now we have all the data we need to know for the product. So we know the product hardware profile ID, the handler, plus the stamp, operating system DPA, and also we have the list of all standards it supports. It supports the binary output, and it also supports the sensor. There's also a driver library. I will touch it later. You can see also the driver. The driver actually is nothing less than just the JavaScript code, okay? So we will go to the documentation and I will show you the details. For instance, this is the code of the driver for binary output. So as I said, there is always a pair of functions, one for creating the request and one for decoding the response. So as you can see, there is a function to enumerate the binary outputs, and there is also a pairing functions to decode the response of that. Yeah, the same with sensor, for instance. When talking about the sensors, we have the function to code the requests, yeah, and also to decode the response. Yeah, it's not very useful to dig into the details of JavaScript, so let's show the description of it. So that was the repository API part of the documentation, and now let's go to the drivers part of the documentation. So we have described all these pairs of functions to encode the request and decode the response. And let's look, for instance, for the very simple driver for LED, for instance. So if we go to the LED and let's say you want to pulse the LED. So all what you do, you just call this request, you call this request function. It encodes for you DPA request to pulse LED. You pass the request to your gateway. You will get back the response, and you will call another pairing function, response1, to decode it. And this is it. Very simple. You don't have to know the number of the peripheral. You don't have to know the command number. You don't have to type in hardware profile ID and all other things that you normally have to do when dealing with byte-oriented DPA messages. Let's have a look at something more complicated, the sensor one. So, for instance, all you have to do when you want to read a standard sensor, You don't care who is the manufacturer. Yeah, I'll show you in the example later on. You don't care whether the manufacturer is Protronics or Netio or any other. Yeah. So what you do, you call that function that constructs a request to read the sensors for you. All what you do is just to pass, in this case, a parameter. If you don't pass it, it reads the first sensor, for instance. If you pass -1, it reads all the sensors, or you can even specify which sensors you want to read. On the response side, when you decode it, that function for you does a decode of the response, including everything, including the name of the sensor you read, I mean the quantity, short name, long name, the value itself, and unit. In this example, for instance, the response gave us 3 quantities, 3 sensor values. The first one was the temperature, the second one was relative humidity, and the third one was the frequency of domains. So in reality, it returns you the array of objects, of JavaScript objects, and each object has these 5 fields that gives you all what you need to do. Then it's up to you what you do. If you store it, if you decide based on the values, if you display it, if you send it to your cloud, whatever you do. The important thing is that you don't have to study the details of the DPA messages. The drivers do it for you. The same applies to the light, for instance. So if you want to play with the lights and you want to set the power, you just pass the array of objects and you just say which light you want to control, which power, and optionally, if you want to switch it on just for a certain time. That's all what you do. The same with incrementing power or decrementing power. Binary output standard, very similar. All what you do is just set the output. You pass the array of objects in JavaScript, which output, which state, the time. And the routine does the coding for you, and on the way back, it decodes for you in the response. So those are the drivers, okay? As I said, they are JavaScript drivers, and we decided for JavaScript because it's the script language that could be easily called from many other frameworks. Today we already have an example in C# or plain HTML page, and I will run it later. Now I'll show you the integration level we today have in IQRF IDE. Let me show you the camera of our network. I will arrange the windows. Okay. So what I have on my table today is a simple network containing 3 nodes. Node number 1 is our IQRF IoT package example. So it's a relay module plus sensor module, and all is controlled by the transceiver. The handler contains standardized binary output and sensor. Node number 2 is a Netio plug. The plug can control a device, and it also reads 7 different sensor values from domains, like voltage, current, and so on. I'll show you. The third device I have, number 3, is a light. It's an indoor light from company Datmolux, and you can see just the part of the light because it generates a lot of light, so I don't want to, destroy my webcam. And there is also what you can see is the control circuit that inside contains the IQRF. On the other side of my table, I have a gateway, IQRF gateway daemon running on a Raspberry Pi in my local network. So with IQRF IDE, I have connected to the gateway, as you can see, and here are the nodes. Let's try some basic stuff. Let's, for instance, switch on the slide. Right now, in the IQRF IDE, as we don't have the third level of integration, I have to construct the commands byte by byte, for instance. So I want to control the light. It's an address number 3. I want to use a standard light. I want to set the power, and I want to set the power of the light number 1 to a very low power because I don't want to have too much light here. And maybe you see on, I hope you see on the camera that the light is on. All right, let's switch it off for now. Here it is. Let's say I want to read all the numbers from the sensors from inside the plug. So it's a number 2. I will call standard sensor. I will read all the sensors with the types. And now I have to type in the data. I want to read all the sensors. I will send it. And as you can see, those are the numbers read out of the plug. So voltage here in my lab is 231 volts. The consumption of the device connected to the plug is 6 milliamps. Consumption is 2.5 watt. The power factor is 1. I have exactly 50 hertz, and consumed consumption is 30 watt hours. And the last time the consumption was reset is time 0. We can also try to read another standard sensor. We don't care who is manufacturer. And let's read this example. So IoT kit example from here. The temperature it says is 23, and the binary data is 19. It's a photoresistor. So if I put my hand, if I cover it and start it again, the number should be higher. As you can see, 95. Yeah, this number is the position of the potentiometer over here. So if I turn it the other side, we should get the maximum 227 value, I hope. Yes, we did. So this is the way how we control the standard devices from the terminal. So we have to know the bytes and the bits, we have to construct it. When we use the drivers, as I will show, you don't have to know. Let's spend some time in the table of the network that was already read from the network. So here you can see that our network consists of 3 devices. The level 1 of the integration with repository allows me to find out what the device it is. So device number 1 is actually the example of sensor and relay, and the manufacturer is IQRF Tech. Device number 2 is a Netio product, Cobra power plug. And the number 3 is a Datmo Lux light. Yeah, all this data is read from the repository. I can show you. So this is our internal wrench application used to maintain the repository. And as you can see in this table in the repository, there are all the registered products, and some of them we saw in the IDE, right? In the IDE that we will release, there is a new setting page, and this setting page allows you to connect to the repository. So you specify just the address, you can keep the default one, and the IQRF IDE is caching the content of the repository in order not to ask every detail real time from the internet. So you can keep your data up to date. So because the IDE will download the repository at the startup or daily, or you can download the content of the repository anytime you want by pressing now. So right now I have updated a local copy of the repository on my computer, and I can even go offline, and nevertheless I am offline. The IQRF IDE will give me all the information I need. The important feature that is not yet 100% implemented is feature that keeps your network up to date. As you can see, there is a new button over here. If you press it, the IDE compares the version of each handler in your devices compared the status of the repository. So it can recommend you to update your device, or you can even, if you want, downgrade. It warns you if there is a old operating system or DPA. So for instance, when talking about the device number 1, I can click here and I'll see that in the repository there are 3 packages for device number 1, 2 old ones and the last one, and this is the actual one I have. If there would be a new package available, it will be listed over here, and the IDE will recommend me to do the update. The same with the device from Netio. For the light from Datmolux, we did not update the handler yet. That's why there's a red cross. So if I decide to update, for instance, to keep device up to date, I will just switch them on in these checkboxes, press this button. It's not yet implemented, and this button will ensure that the up-to-date handlers will be uploaded into all the devices, and all the devices will be up to date. The IQRF IDE is using normal DPA commands. Everything is documented. Why I'm stressing this out is that you can do the same. You can do the same in your gateway application, in your cloud application. All data are free, available using the well-documented APIs. One more detail concerning the repository API. I will switch back to the browser. There is an authorization available, but it's not. You don't have to do it. What's the correct English word for that? You don't have to do it, but you can authorize. If you don't authorize, you will get a normal view on all the objects from the repository. But certain objects could be available only for certain users. The reason for that is, for instance, when we develop a new product, we don't want the product to be visible to all. So you can ask us for an account to create for you. We will create account, and that account will get the right to see a new product, for instance, or new IQRF OS and DPA we develop internally. Without that, you don't see it. At the bottom of the description of the API, you can see the details of each object. For instance, the company objects, standard product object, package object. Everything is well described. Yeah, everything is well described. Let me run one more example of the API. It's a server query. The server query tells you who is authorized, who is the user today. And a very important field is database checksum. By comparing this long number to your already stored one, you can easily find out if anything was changed in the repository from your last download. So that number could be used to keep your cached offline data always up to date. This is something that is worth noting. So I showed you the details of the API documentation. There is also example. You can try it by your own. I showed you the drivers documentation, and now let's run some examples. For that, I have to switch the gateway to a normal operation mode. So it will not provide me a UDP channel anymore, the UDP channel that I used in the IDE. And here are two examples on the web available. The one is a C# example. It's a small C# console application I'll show you. And the second one is HTML page. I'll start with HTML page running locally from my computer because I want to connect not using SSL. So it's a simple web page. You can have a look at the source code. It looks like it's complicated, but believe me, there's lots of library stuff that you simply need. You need some code to connect to MQTT. You need some code to catch the errors and many other things. At the end of the day, only these 4 lines of code is the actual, get the request to read the temperature, change the node address, get the MQTT response, parse the response, and show it, okay, in the web page. That's all. Yeah, this is all. So we will not go into the details of the code today, of course, but you can study it, look at it, give us a feedback, and so on. So I will run it today. And as you can see, it reads the temperature from this module. Let's disconnect the module to test it a little bit. Okay, the module is disconnected, and I got the error timeout. I will plug it in again. Yeah, as you can see, the module is back. I will run it, and I have the temperature again. So everything is inside HTML page, no outside code, no knowledge how to type in the DPA request, everything based on the drivers, on the connection with repository and the gateway. Let's run the same example, absolutely the same example in the C#. As you can see, it's not long. Most of the lines is the comment for you to understand what's going on. So actually, again, this is the whole code. Just again, 4 lines. Let's create the request, change the address of the node, get the response, decode the response, and print it out. I will run it from Visual Studio, and here we go. Yeah, the same output like from HTML page. The temperature is 24.5 centigrade grades. Yeah, very simple example. We will provide examples in other languages and other types of examples. We already have a complicated examples using many peripherals, embedded ones, and including the standard peripherals. Let me show it. I will switch to the more complicated example in the C#. I will start it. It's compiled now in Visual Studio, and now it runs. Okay. So it talks to the node number 1, which is the Netio plug. It reads all the data from the operating system. I know the MID, operating system version, everything. I know the details about the node, the address, zone, all the things. I got the information about the product from the repository. So it's a Netio Cobra power plug, the manufacturer's Netio products. I know the homepage. I know even the picture. I found out that the the product supports the binary output and the sensor standard, always I have to download the driver library. Yeah, the driver library is the set of routines that is used by all other drivers. Now, using the standard command and the driver, I asked the device which sensors you have, which quantities you can measure, and I got the response. Yeah, I can measure low voltage, current, power factor, mains frequency, consumption, daytime. Here you can see the difference compared what I showed you in the IQRF IDE. The IQRF IDE had to understand the response because it cannot use drivers yet. Here we use the drivers. So when I asked what are the values and the sensors of this plug, I got the result like this. I simply got the array of 7 objects. Each object gives the details about each of the 7 sensors. For instance, the current, the name of the sensor, type is number 7. This is a standardized type in our standard. The short name is I. The value is 6 milliamps, and the unit is ampere. Yeah, the same with the frequency, the same with the power, and so on and so on. So this is it. This is how it looks and how it works. If you are interested, go into the examples. You can look at them, you can try them, you can even run it by yourself. All what you need is an access to the IQRF gateway, just the basic installation, no special stuff. Just install it. All you have to know is the address, IP address of it, and you can run all the examples. No special equipment needed. The last topic I wanted to touch is the certification. As you saw, we have about 15 products in the repository already running on our standards, meaning they are actually certified. How it became? There are 2 ways today. The first way is that the manufacturer of the product, the example is, for instance, the Datmolux Lite. Here it is, Datmolux Lite. They simply, by themselves, implement and develop the DPA handler, that works in the way that is standardized. They send it to us, and what we do is that we plug it into our network, like today, this light, test it, and based on the correct functionality, we say it's certified. The second way is that we implement, based on mutual agreement, we implement DPA handler for the product in our premises. So that's, for instance, the way how we did it for well-known protronic sensors. So the protronic sensors, the handler for them is implemented in IQRF Tech. So we know it's working in the way. We know it's standardized and it's certified. So those are the ways. All the topics I wanted to discuss today, I went through. So let me summarize it, summarize what I showed you today. Today, the main topic of the webinar was actually the repository, IQRF Repository. The IQRF Repository is the service that gives you, as an integrators, the basic information about all the objects that the IQRF ecosystem consists of. It also gives you not only information about the information, but also relation. Guys, do you see the display now, or is it off? Because there was some malfunctioning on my side. Can you hear me? Is there anybody out?
No, we cannot see it.
Okay, but is there anybody out there?
I can hear you.
I can hear you. Thank you, Pink Floyd.
Hi, this is Oslo. Hi.
Hi.
Let me. There was some disconnection on my side of the monitor, probably. Now you should see it again.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Now it's coming.
Is it?
It's loading.
It's loading. Thank you.
Yeah, it's back.
So I will talk because you can hear me. So the IQRF repository gives you the basic information and the relationships between the objects of the IQRF ecosystem. Based on that, you can optimize your application. You can find it out what product it is, which standards it supports. You can keep your products up to date by keeping them with the latest DPA handler. You can check out if you have the latest operating system, the oldest DPA. Last but not least, you can utilize drivers for, we believe, very fast implementation of your logic, and you can get your products running very fast in the network because you don't have to learn the details of the protocols. What you do is simply you just call the driver routines to get the request, pass it, got the response, and decode it. Very simple. Yeah. I believe if you interested, of course, if you look in the examples we provide, you will find out that it's very easy. So this is it. If you have any questions now, or if you have any questions later on, just pass it to me, send it over the email, fax it, or just call me. Simon told you that there is a gathering on the 1st of February. Maybe some of you will be there. We can meet personally and discuss the things. We are happy for any constructive feedback or criticism because the repository and all the other things are pretty new. It's still developed, but it's working. We use it. And any, as I said, not positive, I mean, any feedback, constructive feedback is welcome, right? So thank you very much for your attention. And now if there are any questions, just come. Looks like this is not the case. This is not the case. Hopefully everything was understood and clear. If not, again, you can ask later on. I don't mind. Simon?
Okay, thank you very much, Hinek. Thank you to all of you guys. Actually, the event that Hinek mentioned, the 1st of February, is for the Czech community here in Prague, so I don't expect you actually to show up for this one, but I would definitely invite you to the IQRF Summit. So I guess you are all in our newsletters, so you will get the last news. But here we will go much into the detail. We will have some experience with that already, so it's the best place where to share the experience. So thanks a lot to all of you, and see you next time.